Hello, and thank you everyone for joining for today's conversation with Congressman Jamie Raskin, U.S. Representative from Maryland's 8th Congressional District and former Maryland State Senator. I am Alison Malmon, founder and executive director of Active Minds. In addition to all of that, Jamie is also a dad, and it's his mixture of both of those things, the things that we have in common, that really means so much to me to be able to have this conversation today. So I just want to start by saying, hello, Representative Raskin. How are you today?
Allison, I'm delighted to be with you, and I'm down in my office in the Rayburn House office building, but I'm thrilled to join you and my friends with Active Minds.
Amazing, amazing. At the top of this, I mentioned our similarities, and while I do want to get into your life in politics over the past few years and months, I really want to start with what the past few months have been like for you and your family. At the beginning of this year, you told the world that your amazing son, Tommy, had taken his own life on New Year's Eve. You posted a tribute that I actually ended up resharing on my own account because I was so moved by the way you framed both his life as well as not kind of shying away from his death. And I know so often as suicide loss survivors, we don't really know how to talk about what has happened to our loved ones, with our loved ones and in our lives, but you embraced it all with such dignity, and it was so beautiful and meant so much to me. And I just wanted to ask, can you tell me what these past few months have been like since Tommy's death?
Well, it's been tough. It's been hard times for our family, but we've had just tremendous, overwhelming love and support from family and friends and our community and my constituents and people really across the country and around the world. And there was just this extraordinary confluence of things that took place. First with losing Tommy on the last day of 2020, and then the violent insurrection on January the 6th, where Tabitha was with me and Hannah's husband Hank was with me. And so we were sort of all re-traumatized again by that. And then I was the lead impeachment manager in the trial in the Senate, so I threw myself into that. So it's been a very intense period for us, and it's been hard to do it all without Tommy. I mean, he was, in addition to being our son, our only son, and our middle child and kind of the center of our family. He was like a great political mind and observer and critic and analyst, and we could have used him for all that stuff. But the COVID-19 was a very tough time on our people everywhere. And we lost so many people. I mean, we lost more than 600,000 people to the disease so far. It's not over yet. And hundreds of thousands more to the opioid crisis and to gun violence and to suicide, mental and emotional health problems. This has been a very, very difficult time, especially for young people, because COVID-19 interfered with their work lives, it interfered with their emotional lives, their relationships, their education, everything, so if you're already struggling with some kind of mental or emotional health problem, it just compounds the difficulty of all of that isolation and pressure that we saw building up for people. So anyway, but we're every day we feel a little bit better. We launched a memorial fund in Tommy's name to work on the issues he cared about most: global poverty, human rights, animal rights and welfare. More than $1 million came in for contributions. And so Tommy's sisters, Hannah and Tabitha, and a bunch of cousins are running this, and they've already given away, I think, $15,000 or $20,000 to Oxfam and to Amnesty International and to the different groups that Tommy was invested in.
That's amazing. I think a lot about legacies, and what those of us who kind of are left as survivors are to make of the lives of our loved ones and what we want their legacy to be and our own legacy. And I do this work through Active Minds, in memory of my brother Brian, who died by suicide. And you know, um, the legacy that you've created for Tommy, that he created for himself, and that the Raskin family has continued, is something that I think is just incredible. And to hear that his sisters and cousins are involved in the Memorial Fund, and to know that you have launched the Thomas Bloom Raskin Act in the state of Maryland in order to allow Maryland's crisis counselors to reach out to people who need mental health help even before they reach out to it. I'm curious what you want Tommy's legacy to be, and what you want your own legacy to be through all of this.
I mean, Tommy had this extraordinary hypersensitivity to pain and suffering and injustice in the world, and I don't know if everybody else can experience life in the same way. Obviously, it ultimately was not sustainable for Tommy, but all of us could feel a little bit more personally other people's sorrows and, the indignity and the pain of injustice and human suffering and animal suffering, Tommy was a passionate vegan. He converted dozens and dozens of people to it, not by guilt tripping anybody, but just by, usually inviting people to dinner or lunch and showing them how good the food is that you can eat without eating meat, but then talking about the conditions for animals in the livestock industry. And, so he felt that intently, but he felt most intently the suffering associated with war and the deliberate use of violence as an instrument of foreign policy. So there's a lot to learn from his example. And like a lot of great champions of nonviolence, the pain of the world was overwhelming for him just because everything is so broken, and so it's very sad we don't have him with us. But we're trying to, incorporate his values as much as possible and the things that he believed in everything that we do.
It's so evident by your work that your work is a epitome of what you describe his values are. And so clearly, within the family, you can see it. And you and I met many, many years ago over lunch, and just talking about the need to address mental health in a different way, and to see your career path since, and to see what's happened within your family since, and to really understand how at your core you believe so deeply in this work, and it's shown in your children. It is.
Well, I appreciate that. That's kind of you to say, Alison. I feel like emotional and mental health is sometimes, certainly used to be, depicted as some kind of peripheral issue. There's like the real problems of like the real issue. No, there's emotional and mental health. And I think a lot of what Active Minds has been about, and the other groups that are working on this, is to put it right at the center. People's emotional and mental health, along with their physical health, are central to everything that we want to do. And I think that we saw during a period of terrible political polarization and division and demonization and vilifying people, insulting people, degrading people, what a toll that took on public emotional and mental health. I think that the health of our political process, the character of our leadership, the character of government, are all very closely connected to how people are experiencing life. And if you've got any sort of mental or emotional health struggle and you're thrust into a situation, well, like what we saw on January 6th, I mean, that's just a brutal thing for people to go through, for everybody to go through. But then if you're already, depressed, or you already have anxiety, that's a terrible thing. So for me, I feel like the struggle to defend democracy, to expand democracy, to make democracy strong is very interwoven with the struggle to secure people's mental and emotional health, and they go together. And when you go to societies of great injustice and authoritarianism, you find a lot of people who are in great pain. And the more our society gets like that, the more difficult it is for people.
I can't stop thinking about, and I'm sure so many people do, the fact that you had to go through what you did at the end of 2020, a week later, being in where you were in January 6th with your daughter and son-in-law, and then, having to dive deeply into your work. And obviously not everybody is in the field that you are doing, the work that you're doing, but to have to kind of resume life amidst grief. And I'm sure a lot of people resonate with that, whether it be the losses of, related to COVID in 2020 in general, or any loss that folks have had to deal with, balancing personal tragedy and professional pursuit. What has that been like for you? What have these past few months been like for you to have to do both, or choose to do both, or I don't even know what word you would use to balance both of those things?
I mean, this is something that I've wrestled with, like whether you honor someone who you've lost, who you love, if you honor them most by just, I don't know, just staying home and indulging your sense of misery and grief, or it's better to try to live the values that they embodied for you. Yeah. I mean, it's particularly difficult with Tommy, because Tommy was like the funniest person I ever met. So he had an amazing sense of humor, and he was a funny person. And I always struggle with this. It's like, well, do we honor Tommy's memory most by being miserable, which is how we feel not having him, or trying to recover our sense of humor and make life as joyful as possible for people who are left behind, So I don't know what the answer is. I mean, people have been so kind. They've sent me, I have 10,000 letters. I've got hundreds of books that people have sent me. I've read a bunch of them. I'm writing a book about Tommy and about what happened to us on January 6th and about the trial, which has been very therapeutic for me. But I don't, I can't see that there's any formula for dealing with it. I think that everybody's just going to have to absorb the shock of events in their own way and try to find a way through, with family and friends and colleagues and neighbors and stuff. But there's a lot of love out there in the world. I mean, I feel like, trauma, I've imagined that, trauma as a Greek god. I have a friend who's a classics professor, and I asked him whether there was a Greek god of trauma. There's no Greek god of trauma, so I try to imagine one, and I think about a god kind of like Janus, maybe even a cousin of Janus. The two-faced god can look into the past and look into the future, and I guess Janus is the god of beginnings or doorways. But I think of trauma as also a god with two faces, and one part of it is it will strip you of the things you love most and destroy the things most important to you, and uproot your life as you knew it, so you can barely even recognize reality. But on the other hand, trauma also can be like a bridge to other people. You can connect with other people's experience. You can experience emotions and feelings you hadn't understood before. You can be in touch with a world of emotion and pain that maybe you were oblivious to.
Yeah.
And it can equip you with a lot of strengths that you didn't have before, you know? So it's obviously not a fair trade-off. You know, I think everybody would prefer not to experience a loss like this. Nobody wants it. But given that, you know, it's presented to you as a fait accompli,
Right.
then you have to try to find, you know, you have to find what consolations there might be. I mean, one of them was, I mean, it was extraordinary to me on January 6th that I experienced no fear at all. I felt like I'd already experienced the worst thing that could have ever happened to me. So there was nothing that, you know, the Proud Boys or Donald Trump could do to me that would be worse. And so it gave me a certain kind of strength and fearlessness.
I really love that. And it's you know, when you've gone through this loss, it feels like, why should you ever, why should anybody ever have to go through this? And, you know, I think I've often too, Jamie said that I wish I never had to go through this. And yet there's so much value in what I've gone through, to be in touch with emotions that I wasn't in touch with, to know how to talk to people who experience loss, and maybe not a suicide loss, but something in a way that I never knew. I loved what you said at the beginning. My brother also was the funniest person I knew. And I always like longed to have any level of comedic talent that he did. But what you said at the beginning of like, can we recover our sense of humor through this, and to do that in honor of Tommy, in honor of Brian, all of it, and how can we use what they've been in our lives to make our lives better and to make other people's lives better. And I think those lessons, you know, I'm 20 years out from my loss, and so those lessons never stop, and they come in waves, and all of those pieces. And I think, you know, as you said, it's a journey, and there's not one right formula. And what feels right after a month may not feel what right after 6 months. And maybe it's writing about it, maybe it's taking a step back, all of those things. But I think this journey as a loss survivor teaches you a lot about how to then get through the next stuff. And I feel very fortunate that I feel unflappable also, that you can bring anything on to me, and I've gotten through that. And so I can get through a lot of other things. So I really appreciate kind of that perspective, and knowing that it doesn't always feel that way, right? Like you can say it and then go off of a conversation and feel crushed. And that's okay too, because you know, tomorrow that you can feel unflappable again, even if it doesn't happen all the time. Loss.
I think that's right. So, I mean, I guess, you know, even my feelings about death have changed. I mean, if I think about, you know, if I just think about life without Tommy in isolation, it seems unbearable. But if I put it in the perspective of all of us are really here for such a short period of time, you know, and a century from now or 2 centuries from now, people will look back, and all of our lives in this time will be kind of amalgamated together. And then it's just a question of what we do with the limited time we got.
Yeah. I would love, Jamie, if we can just close. I want to let you go, but I would love to ask, what do you think is the single greatest opportunity for change around mental health that you see in the world, both as a father and as a congressman?
Well,
where do we go? Where do we go from here?
You know, I mean, in some sense, the problem of mental and emotional health is just the problem of health. You know, we've got to take responsibility as a society for healthcare for everybody. And
Yeah.
mental and physical health to be treated the same way. I mean, theoretically, that's what the law is, but we know that that's very much a paper promise at this point. We've not translated it. I mean, it's something like 40% of the counties in the country don't even have a single child psychiatrist, you know. And people find it very difficult to get the help that they need. I think that we're going to need to take stock of the health of our people. I mean, we're the wealthiest society that ever existed. And other countries have come up with health systems that try to address the needs of every single person. So the value breakthrough that we need to get there is we have to be willing to say that everybody's health is important to all of us. I mean, I think COVID-19, if nothing else, surely taught us that. It's not safe to have, you know, even 10 or 15% of the people not covered by health insurance.
Yeah.
It's not safe to have anybody who, you know, can't be seen by a doctor or can't be vaccinated or can't be tested, right? Everybody's got to be in some relationship with healthcare, and that goes, you know, equally or doubly true for mental and emotional health. So, you know, we've been very fortunate and moved by how many people have wanted to honor Tommy by naming different things after him, like scholarships in schools and scholarships in camps and essays and prizes, and it's really a lovely thing. But I think that the greatest legacy for everybody who has suffered would be a society and a healthcare system that tries to take care of everyone and their needs.
I love that. I love that. What a phenomenal way to end. Again, thank you so much for sitting down and talking with me and sharing.
Well, thank you, Alison. You got me really emotional on this Monday, but it was a pleasure talking to you. And thank you for talking about Tommy. And we miss him, but we love active minds. And thanks for what you're doing to help people all over the place.
Well, I appreciate that, and want to keep learning more and more and more about him and connect with your family. And so thank you for everything that you do for our country and for this field. And it's just so good to talk to you. Thanks so much. Take care.